All right, this is Elizabeth Priller. We are just getting all the tech stuff figured out. If you're an expert in anything, you know that anything outside of your expertise, you're kind of like, what in the world am I doing? So that's kind of how I feel about tech right now. I am live in Zoom, trying to get it to go over to Facebook Live. So either way, this is being recorded. And so thank you so much for your patience as we get this moving along. So thank you, first of all. Thank you so much for making the time to be here today. If you are already part of the Mind Body Thrive for Professional Women's group, thank you for being present. Thank you for all of the interactions and the support that you give to other women. If you have not joined yet, this is your opportunity to do so while the group is still free and open. So again, hop on over to Facebook to Mind Body Thrive for Professional Women. And what that group is about is it's focusing on stress management specifically for the professional woman. And that can, fit so many different categories, right? So we can have anything from a stay-at-home mom to a CEO, anything that you're an expert in, any way that you spend your day and your life makes you a professional. So I like to keep that open. So let's get started. First of all, again, I'm Elizabeth Priller. I'm a registered nurse, certified health coach, and registered yoga teacher. And I kind of combine the East and the West. That's the best way of looking at the work that I do. I combine 24 years of experience, both personally and professionally, both the East in terms of Eastern medicine and Eastern philosophy, rooted in yoga and Ayurveda, and then also the Western side of things, what we're used to here in the United States. If the United States is your home, you know that, when you have a broken arm, you go to the doctor. If you have a gallbladder attack, you maybe have to have surgery. And so that's the traditional medical science that we're used to here in the States. And so I combine the two together, though. I feel that when we approach our systems in a balanced way, and we're looking at all different parts of the self and all different parts of caring for the self, that's where true healing and transformation can occur. So I'm going to get started with our monthly Q&A. Again, you are in for a special treat today. We will not be able to get to all of the questions today, but I have highlighted 3 or 4 of them that are spot on and should cover the majority of the questions that we had for today. So let me open up the questions. And before I get to the questions, let's talk about something, okay? First of all, I want you to know that this is not medical advice. Even though I am a medical professional, I have a medical license, I want you to understand that this is for educational purposes only. Now, I do bring a lot of science into our discussions to helping people understand how their brains and their bodies, their minds, their organs, their hormones, and everything work together, especially with the stress response. But just so you know, I'm not prescribing for you. All right, so the first thing, before we get to the questions, one of the biggest questions that I get asked is, what exactly do you do? And that is the age-old question. So I mentioned earlier my experience and how that has come into this crystal ball, if you will, bringing all of the modalities together to help people. If I had to break it down into one sentence, what I do is I transform the way people live and the way they work related to stress and chronic illness. And I do that with 5 pillars. There are 5 primary pillars that I use that I have found that when these pillars are in balance and they're in a state of homeostasis, which is equilibrium, we can thrive in life. And those 5 pillars are how we think, how we breathe, how we move, eat, and sleep. And think about it. If you don't sleep well, you know that you're feeling off in your body. You maybe make food choices that wouldn't normally be what you would eat. Or perhaps your mood is affected. You're not feeling like being active, physically active that day. Maybe it increases pain in your body. And so we know keeping that equilibrium is probably the hardest thing to do, especially as professional women. Now, whether you're a mom, you're a wife, you're a sister, you're a daughter, however you find that you're spending your time and energy, you know that often as women, we tend to put ourselves last because we're givers, we're caregivers, we're go-getters. And that can start as from a place of compassion and love. But we know that it can easily spin out of control. And before you know it, we're left in a ball on the floor in bed, not really sure a shell of who we feel we are at our best. And how often do our families get what's left of us? Maybe our job takes the best of us, and then we give our families what's left. And I know I was in that position not that long ago, several years ago. If you've heard my story, you know that for over 20 years, I suffered greatly. Suffered in my mind, and I suffered in my body. And I suffered in my relationships because I was allowing my job to come before my family and even my own well-being. So I'm going to read to you some of the feedback that I get from people when they first come to me, when they're at their limits, or a lot of times people just don't know what to do. And so they don't do anything, or they try something and it doesn't work. So I'm going to read you a few of the responses and comments that I get from people. One person said, stressing, I tend to stress over things that I can't control. I play it over in my mind over and over again when it hasn't even happened. And so how many of you could agree that we tend to ruminate on things? Or if we're worried, we are thinking in the future, whereas regret or shame or depression is often about something in the past. So stress is usually something that has already happened or something that has not happened, that our mind is ruminating over. Another person said, finding a healthy way to handle stress. I let it build up inside and I tend to make everything my responsibility. And again, as women, isn't that true? We carry such a heavy burden sometimes, whether it's with our families, with our careers, our education. We have these standards, sometimes these invisible standards that we feel we have to meet. And if we don't meet them, which again, they are most often invisible, then we feel less than. And so that in itself can bring about stress. Another person brought up emotions. They said they try to keep, how do you keep things in perspective and not get angry or overreact based on emotion rather than a calm reaction? And this all really has to do with so many different things, but primarily three things. We're looking at brain physiology. So we're looking at the neuroendocrine system of the brain. So hormones in the brain that are there for a response. Whenever there's a perceived threat, there is a cascade of events that happen in the brain, and then they translate into the body. So it's awesome that they identify within themselves that I notice that I tend to react in a certain way. And I would like to help people go from reacting to responding, right? There's a big difference between reacting and responding. Responding is a choice. Reacting is unconscious. So that's another thing that a lot of people struggle with. And maybe you find yourself in that position where you're always on edge or things come out of your mouth that you wouldn't normally say, but you tend to say them or react in a way that doesn't feel like you. All right. A lot of people, I have about 80 or 90 comments here. A lot of people struggle with anxiety. There are so many things that anxiety could be rooted in. One of them is, again, a fear response. And now this isn't to say that a fear response is not warranted. But anytime, as I echoed earlier, anytime the body, the brain, the mind perceives a threat, there's going to be some sort of response. So we're going to dive into that a little bit today, but I want to go ahead and let's shift gears so we can stay on target here. All right, so I'm going to dive into the questions. I'm going to try to get to at least 3 in our time together today. So the first question is, who invented stress and can we get rid of them? Can we hurt that person? Well, that is such a great question. Who invented stress? Let's start with the origin of stress. Now, we think of stress, sometimes when we hear the word stress, we think of many different things. We may feel a visceral response in the body. Maybe we feel it in the head, the chest, and the gut, shoulders, neck, those types of things. That's the physical response of stress. But what is stress? Stress is the limit that has been put on the mind or the body, or actually anything. And stress is not always bad. We tend to think of stress as bad because it's everywhere, right? It's ubiquitous. But let's think about that for a minute. Let's say you have a really important thing to take care of, a big engagement. You're meeting someone new for the first time. You have a big project due at work. A healthy amount of stress gives us just enough fuel, just enough energy to stay focused and to have, some engagement with that particular event. But what happens is over time, we get stuck in a pattern of stress, and that pattern has roots in the neurovascular and the neuroendocrine system. So those words that I'm using, if you're not familiar with them, we're talking about neuro in terms of the brain and the nerves, the nervous system, and endocrine hormones, and the vascular system is the blood flow. So we've got hormones, we've got electrical activity, we've got blood flow, all of these things that are happening in the brain and the body. But stress is there, the response, the acute stress response is there to keep us safe. In fact, that's the only thing that your brain is trying to do, is keep you safe and alive. Crazy, right? It doesn't feel like it sometimes, because again, if you're under chronic stress, it doesn't feel like it's there to help you. So think about it, you're in your space, you're comfortable, you're warm, everything's cool, and all of a sudden you hear a loud noise, or just something really startling happens. Maybe you're out in the woods and you see something go by you that maybe resembles a bear. The stress response in your body, fight, flight response, is there for you to stay safe. So why does that switch over into chronic stress? Why is this a thing, right? Well, again, it's there to keep you alive. But when it flips over into chronic stress is, again, as I mentioned earlier, when the brain perceives a threat. So you're thinking, well, I feel safe, my house is fine, my relationships seem okay. I have a home, I have food, etc. Why would my brain perceive a threat? Well, I would challenge you a little bit here and say, what messages are we giving to our brain? Think about it. I want you to right now just drop your shoulders and take a really big, deep breath, filling up both lungs. And then remove the tongue from the roof of your mouth and exhale your air. That in itself gives the message to the brain that I'm safe. When we squeeze up our shoulders to our ears, our tongue is pushed up against our mouth, our eyes are intently focused, and there's tension in the body, the brain is perceiving that as there must be a threat. And so just in that response alone, just in that short amount of time, we're able to send a different message to the brain. So who invented stress? Well, that depends on your belief, on how you came to be on this earth. But ultimately, the brain was designed and has systems in place to keep you alive. Chronic stress happens when we get stuck in a pattern of giving messages to the brain, or the brain perceiving messages that there's a threat. So we talk way more of that in my program, but we're going to focus on the next question. All right, so the next question says, I have had a hard time focusing working from home the last few weeks. Also, I've been struggling with sleep, both most likely due to stress. My mom brain is always thinking about what I need to get done. Any tips to center me and help me focus to get actual rest? Man, this question has so much power into it, because I'm sure there's many of you there that feel one of these things, whether you're a mom or, it's your career, or you're working from home, maybe you're going back into the office. Sleep is really, again, it was one of the 5 pillars that I fully believe is one of the biggest ways that we can transform our well-being. So the big question is then how, right? Well, what happens when we sleep? The only way the brain is going to make that switch at night, to flip the switch, is if all is well. Now, that does not mean that all is well all of the time, but is the brain perceiving that the list is checked? One of the quickest things I can say to this is making, and it sounds silly, but it really does work, making a list of the things that are worrying you, your to-do list, anything that's going on in your brain. When we write it down, it's almost as if we're transferring it from our brain to paper. It doesn't take care of the problem in that sense, but when we write it down, we know we can tell ourselves, when I have the energy in the headspace, and after I've had sleep, then this is what I'm going to address. Now, this is something that, anything that I talk about is never a quick fix. This is not something that just happens overnight. We know that true transformative change takes time and consistency. So just as much as your brain has been wired to be anxious, to worry, to not sleep, to feel restless, just as much as it's been wired for that, it can be rewired in the reverse, but it takes time. So the first thing I would recommend is in the hour before bed, I should say the second thing, the hour before bed is critical to what you're allowing into your mind and your body and your brain. So 3 quick tips. Blue light, and this is from computers, phones, televisions. What that does is it sends the signal to the pineal gland in the brain to not produce melatonin. And melatonin is that hormone that helps us sleep. So that's number one. By 8 p.m., and for some of you that may be too early, too late, it's around 8 p.m., we're going to be naturally producing melatonin. So when we are in front of blue lights, again, any electronic devices, that is telling the brain, hey, she's not done, so don't produce any melatonin because she's clearly still needing to operate. I talk about all about this in the program. So that would be my tip for that. And then what you're allowing into your mind and your body. And that's a deep question, right? What are you allowing? Is it what you're looking at? Is it what you're thinking about, the conversations that you're having? All of this, the brain is really, it's an organ. So it's information in, information out. It's almost like a robot. So we have to consider what it is that we're doing in that hour before bedtime. All right, let's move on to the next question. We only have a few minutes left. So this question says, I'm specifically interested on your take of the neurology behind how stress can lead to disjointed thinking. Essentially, what is the pathway that stress takes along our brain that clouds our cognition? I know it does, I just don't know how. This question is gold, okay? Such a great question. All right, so let me go back to this. The neurology behind stress and how it leads to disjointed thinking. How does it cloud our brain? Really, really simple, all right? We have to think about the brain. Primarily, we have 2 brains. We have our higher level cognition brain. We have our executive functioning where we're able to, critically think. We're able to, like our personality, our time space, adjustments, everything that we need to do our jobs well, right, is in the front part of your brain. The second brain that you have is your reptilian or primitive brain. And this brain is strictly emotional and fear-based, only reactive. In simple terms, this brain cannot operate properly and functionally to the level that we would expect if this brain, the limbic system, the emotional brain, reptilian brain, however you want to phrase that, is active. So imagine it's like there's a security guard between these 2 brains. And the security guard says, if I perceive a threat, I cannot allow you to have critical thinking, to be able to, be rational, to have calm responses. I'm only going to respond out of survival. And many of us have developed coping skills over the years that we're stuck in survival mode. And I could talk all day about that, and we won't even have time to go there today. So we have two brains, and only one of them can be fully operational at a time. So think about it like this. If an intruder comes into your space with a weapon and says to you and threatens you and says, I will let you live if you complete this long division math equation with pen and pencil, or pencil and paper, no calculator. If you get the answer right, I'll let you go. With the weapon drawn on you, there is no way that your critical thinking, logical brain is going to be able to operate because your safety is being threatened. So that's the short form answer, is that we cannot tap into our highest level of thinking when our brain perceives a threat in the form of chronic stress. So great question. Thank you. We could go deeper into that, the actual pathway. Also know that cortisol, the stress hormone, when it is released, and especially in the chronic sense, it bathes the brain. So it sounds like a good thing. It's not a good thing. It bathes the brain and dampens our ability to critically think, to be rational, to have stable moods, to keep our appetite in check, to sleep, all of those things, move, eat, think, breathe, sleep, all of them. Cortisol dampens that process. All right, so the next question is, what is your methodology for the MBT program? How is it structured? So if you haven't heard of it yet, I am launching the Mind, Body, Thrive program next month. I'm super excited. I've already had several women, they're like, sign me up. I'm ready. I know I need this. You're an expert. You've been through it. Let's do this. So the program is structured to be, it's online, first of all, it's an online program. And the reason I've done it this way is because I've had so many people want to work with me directly. And in order for me to really give everyone that needs assistance, that needs that transformation, the time and attention they need, I needed to repeat myself. And I mean this I need to make myself repeatable. How do I make myself available to multiple people? So the MBT program is created to do just that, that we can tap into these 5 pillars, understand the stress cycle in the brain, and understand it personally. You know, this is something that it's going to be personal. So the program is structured to be an online, self-paced module program where we're going to go through a lot of what we talked about today. So as an example, the first module is understanding the stress cycle. We go through things such as the limbic system, neuroplasticity, which is the ability to change and rewire the brain, epigenetics, how your DNA is impacted by your choices, especially when it comes to stress. And then I talk a lot about Ayurveda and your particular stress type, because there are 3 different ways that we tend to respond. 95% of people have one of 3 stress types. And then each of the 5 pillars are a module themselves. So pillar 1 is think. We will talk about behaviors, thoughts, mindsets, your well-being story, any obstacles, how to slash obstacles that are in the way of you thriving in life. And then habit stacking. How do we sequentially stack habits so that it's sustainable? This is not a quick fix. So this program may not be for everyone. If you're looking for a quick fix, if you want results overnight, this probably is not for you, but it is for the person that has reached their absolute limit and they're done. They're done with repeated stress patterns. They're done with chronic illness that is affecting every part of their life. We go into a lot about the breath and even yoga. So the breathe and the move sections, I teach you how to properly breathe, how to tap into activating the vagus nerve, which is responsible for your sense of calm. So that person earlier that said, I don't know how to stop reacting and out of anger or emotion and respond calmly, this is one of those ways. I will be teaching you yoga. So I will get out of this dress. This is one of my favorite dresses. It's purple, my favorite color. But I will be teaching you yoga. We'll get down on the mat. Whether you're on your bed, on the floor, It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but I'm going to teach you ways to move your body mindfully. So we'll go through a whole section on yoga. Eat. Some people have asked me lots of questions, like I have problems with eating comfort foods when I'm stressed. Some people don't eat when they're stressed. And so teaching you and suggesting ways to look at how do you balance your stress type with nutrition. And nutrition is more than food, right? Nutrition is what we allow into our mind and our body. All right, then we focus on sleep, how to activate your own melatonin, how to wake up energized without coffee. That is a big, big one. And even talking about what it is that caffeine does to your brain. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's helpful to understand what it's doing to your brain in good ways and maybe not so good ways. And then the last few sections are how to thrive with purpose, how to identify what your values are, how to identify and clarify your divine purpose, like your purpose, what it is you're supposed to be doing to spend your time, energy, and resources. And maybe some of you already know this, but now we're getting deeper because now we have a calm mind and body. And some people, like my mom tells me all the time, she's like, Elizabeth, you get people to quit their jobs. And what that means is I help people get so freaking clear about what they're supposed to be doing and what brings them joy. They don't have another option. We talk about flexible resilience. We talk about the joy complex and how to transition from work to home, right? Because I don't know about you, I have like a 22-second drive home. So there's not a lot of time in between work and home, but how often do we carry and we mix the two, especially if we're working from home, as someone mentioned earlier. And then the bonuses that you get. You're going to have tons of bonuses that are going to be rolling through as this program is launched. But the two biggest bonuses that I have are going to be sunrise meditations and moontime meditations. So how to start your day in the right path, not just in your mind, but neurologically. Setting the pathway, because we know that neurons that fire together, wire together. So that's how the program is structured. A lot of people will ask, how much time does it take? What are we looking at here? My rule of thumb is give yourself a month for every year that you've been unwell. Now for me, I was 24 years unwell. So for me, it took 24 months before I could finally say, I'm 180 degrees different. Many of you may not, it may be 2 to 4 weeks, but this program is structured that it should take about 3 months, and you'll have accountability and support with me. I will be there to cheer you on. We'll do monthly group calls just like this so that we can engage with each other. We can support each other. You can get your questions answered. So as you're walking through this journey of transformation, you've identified how you want to see your life. Again, this is not for everybody, because if you want a quick fix, I'm probably not your person. But if you are ready, you are tired of the patterns that have not been serving you, don't wait until I did. Until I ended up in the hospital with the warning signs of a stroke. Not worth it. Okay. So here's what I'm going to offer. I have my schedule open. In fact, I'm going to share my screen so that you can see. Let me see if I can do this here. Share screen. Here we go. I have opened up my calendar in the next 24 hours, and I have 6 appointments open to talk to you directly. I want to hear your unique story, your unique situation on why you're done. You're fed up. And maybe you're not 100%, hit the telephone pole, in the ditch mindset in terms of where you're at with stress or chronic illness. But maybe you're like, you know what, I've seen the warning signs and I'm not sleeping. I'm noticing it's affecting my work life, my relationships. You don't have to wait until you crash. This is an opportunity. So I have 6 slots open. I'm going to put the link to my calendar in the Facebook group. And once they're gone, they're gone. So take advantage of it. 6 slots tomorrow. If for some reason you're like, I am ready to go now, I don't even need to talk to you, because I've had several people. I just got off of a call an hour ago and lady was like, I really just wanted to hear your voice, but I'm ready. She's like, just sign me up. So if you are that person, all you have to do is message me and I will go ahead and I will get you connected. So we are 4 minutes over, so I'm going to stop talking. I want to thank you all so much for just, prioritizing yourself during this time. That's really what's most important, is you've taken some time to pour into your cup. If I did not answer your question, please send me a direct message. And next month's Q&A will be only for those that join the MBT program. So that will be a closed session for those in the MBT program, but I am super excited to just see where you are on your journey. Please always follow me on Instagram. That's where I spend most of my time. I pop over on Facebook ever so often. I will always still be here as a resource, but the fall cohort for MBT, this fall's, the only launch this fall, closes in 13 days. So you have an opportunity to take advantage of that. So, all right, that's it. Everybody have a wonderful day. And it's been great to see everyone. And I will see you on the other side. Remember, take a deep breath. Have a wonderful day.